Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today it is Monday, which means it's time for your weekly top 5 video. In this week's top 5 video, we are going over the top 5 players that you will meet while playing World of Warships. By this, I mean these are 5 players that you will encounter in-game. These are some of the most popular types of players that I've seen show up over my 8 years of playing the game. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good. So that's what we're going to be going over in today's video. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get going with our number 5 slot, which finds us with one of the most common types of players, the whale. The whale is that guy that just whatever comes out, he just dumps all of his money into it. Be it some super expensive random bundle, early access ship, or even like we saw with the Indiana, one of those mega Admiral packs that costs $200 for a tier 9 ship. Whatever comes out, he throws his wallet at the game and he acquires whatever item or camouflage or cosmetic that he just has to have. Now, the whale, there's two types of whales. There is the newer whale, if you will, and there's the more veteran whale. Newer whales are those players that, whatever game they're in, they throw their wallet at the store to get whatever item that they want. Now, that does mean that, of course, when you run across a newer whale, or a young whale, I guess we can call them, they're not the most experienced players. These are the guys that you see in like a tier 9 ship in some nation that they have no business being in. Like, let's say the Indiana, for example. It's a good example. They've never played American battleships. They maybe don't even play battleships that much. They maybe be on like a cruiser grind or a destroyer grind. They get bored and they just want to do something else. So they go drop $200 on the Indiana because it's the latest and greatest premium ship, and boom, now they're in a ship that they haven't played. They have no idea what they're doing, and they're pretty, bad drain on your team. These guys are also the guys that will probably be throwing, God knows, 50, 60, 70, 80,000 doubloons at the Hildebrand dockyard for a ship that, again, they don't really know how to play. These are also the guys that, Santa Container time is their favorite time of the year, because they just love to gamble for ships that they don't have, and they have to have everything. Not in the same way that like a collector has to have everything, where they just kind of generally pick up the ships as they go along. The whale has to acquire everything. Now, the more veteran whale, they're the players that they kind of have a better idea of what they're doing, and they buy ships simply because, well, they can and they want them. They're not like the young whale who gets tired of grinding through a line and then drops several $100s on the game. These are the guys that they just have the disposable income and they simply just want the ship. So both of these guys are, of course, very, very important to keeping the game running and such. So we do appreciate whales. We just would wish that some of the younger whales would spend a little bit more time grinding their way up the tech line, or at least spending some time in the nation whose ships that they're dropping, several $100s on in order to acquire them. The more veteran whales, of course, if you run across one of those guys on your team, you're probably going to have a much better time than if you run into a young whale. Young whales are normally pretty easy to spot. If you know how to play a ship, they're normally playing it in the exact opposite way. These are like the HE spamming, like GKs and stuff that you'll see every now and then, or really anything that's not British battleship, they're HE spamming in it, right? They don't know what type of munition to use, they don't really know how to position the ship where it should be, where it's best played, or anything like that. The older whales, they're a little harder to identify because they blend in much better, but if you see a guy over and over again, he's got like every single tier 9 and tier 10 premium ship, there's a very good chance he is a more veteran whale, or a more elder whale, shall we say. Alright, going our way down now to number 4, we have one that I know you have all ran across, and that is the Armchair Admiral. Now, there's two versions of this player. We've got the traditional Armchair Admiral, which, when the match starts, he just starts typing in chat, telling everyone what to do and where to go. Now, don't get me wrong, there's actually nothing wrong with trying to coordinate with your team at the beginning of a match. In fact, you should be trying to do that at the start of the match. But maybe not in the way that the Armchair Admiral does. The Armchair Admiral is barking orders like someone has made him the admiral of your team. that's a stark contrast to the way that you should be trying to coordinate with your team. Just asking, hey, I'm going to A, is anyone heading this way? Or, hey, destroyer in front of me, where are you going? That's one thing. But the Armchair Admiral, he just starts saying, hey, Yami, I need you here. Montana, I need you here. Des Moines, go here. It's like, buddy, it's not clan battles, and no one has made you the caller. Now, the Armchair Admiral, not only will he start barking orders to you, he will also get quite angry if you don't follow his orders. He'll start insulting you, calling you names and stuff, saying that you don't know how to play the game, when really you just don't want to listen to him, because there's a very good chance that, sure, he might have seen a cruiser go there, but it might have been something like a Venezia and not a Des Moines. And two, he might not even take into consideration the enemy team's composition. The fact that, well, it's the start of the game, so we don't really know where he's at yet, where the enemy team's at yet, so we can't really start sending ships to exact coordinates just yet. And of course, too, if you don't follow his orders and then things start to go poorly for your team, of course, you're all the problem, not him. And it's like, buddy, where do you find the time to type this much in chat anyway? Because, like, ain't nobody got time for that, right? Like, you got a ship to be sailing. If you're a battleship, you got shots to be taken. If you're in a cruiser or destroyer, you definitely shouldn't have time to be typing out this many orders in chat. Now, that's the first Armchair Admiral. The second Armchair Admiral is the Armchair Admiral from Beyond. This is the guy that sinks, and now that he's got that free cam view, he starts sparking orders to everybody from beyond the grave, which is even more hilarious because it's like, well, you're dead, buddy. And sure, when players die, it's not always their fault, right? But these guys always seem to die like really early on in game. That way they can sit there and just, keep chat full of their commands for the rest of the match, right? So it's like, you died this early. There's a very good chance that if you die, in the first 5 or 6 minutes of the game, which these guys always seem to do, you're probably not the best guy to be issuing orders to the rest of the team, because, yeah, dying that early, unless you eat some random torpedoes, which we've all been there, yeah, probably not the best qualifier to be an admiral, right? But yeah, they sit there after they've sunk, long after they should have gone back to port. They just start barking orders to everybody, and once again, if you don't follow the orders to the T, it's all your fault and your team's fault for losing the match, and not his fault, even though, again, he probably got sunk in the first 5 or 6 minutes of the game. So that's the Armchair Admiral, one of the lesser pleasant players to run across. All right, going the way down now to number 3, we have Benjamin Franklin. Now, if you're still here at this point, why don't you go ahead and drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel for more of these top 5 videos. And doing those 3 things helps out tremendously so in the YouTube algorithm, and helps the channel grow and get the videos out there to everybody else, because of course we must appease our algorithm overlords before the algorithm will actually show this video to the masses. So if you're still here, you like this stuff, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Anyway, Ben Franklin. So Ben Franklin loves to kite. These guys, that's all they do is kite. Even if they're not in a kiting ship, what do they do when they see the enemy team? They turn around and kite. And I don't mean that they're the guys that go, stern into the objective. That way, if it does get a little spicy, they can run away. These guys, that's all they do is kite, which can be good, can be bad. Don't get me wrong, with the current higher tier meta, it is very much a case that you're going to be in a lot where you are having to retreat from a flank, and kiting in that case does make sense. But these are the guys that, before anything even shows an inkling of going in that direction, they're already trying to run for the border. Because a lot of kiters don't realize that the map is in fact finite, and they will eventually run out of it. And if you're just doing it right away in every situation, it's probably not the best thing for your team, especially, if the team is having to push that flank because, let's say, the other flank is falling, and now, okay, we have to go and get in on the action here. And Mr. Kite, or Mr. Benjamin Franklin, is running in the opposite direction, trying to kite, just trying to bait ships into his gun range so he can just sit there and farm them as they push into him. It's probably not the best thing for that flank. So, while, yes, there is a time and a place for kiting, the Benjamin Franklins out there, they just love to do it right away. You'll see this a lot on certain maps like Okinawa, where it's just, enemy teams sit and spawn, facing away from the cap, trying to entice the other team to push into them. It is a method that does most certainly have its place. Don't get me wrong. Again, so many times in higher tier games nowadays, it's just like you go to a flank, it's you and one other guy, 6 enemy ships pop up. Okay, we got a kite now. And what does the other side do that has, the rest of the team? They're facing 2 other enemy ships. They just sit there and stare at them. So kiting does most certainly have its place. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying there are some guys that are a little addicted to it, perhaps need to go to therapy to overcome their kiting addiction. All right, that takes us down to number 2, which is the advice guy. Now, you might be thinking, Sealord, the advice guy, this sounds a lot like the Armchair Admiral. Well, the difference between the Armchair Admiral and the advice guy is that, well, the advice guy is actually quite helpful. So this is the guy that he's in chat, and let's say you're playing a newer ship, and he sees that you're, maybe not using the right ammunition type, you're not playing in the right way. He'll just say in chat like, hey, that's a nice Des Moines you got there. I see you're spamming a lot of HE in it. Yes, it's got some, rapid-firing main guns, but you should really be using AP. You might be thinking, well, Sealord, surely a Des Moines player has figured out to use AP. You would think so, but this is what warships are talking about. He says stuff like that. Just some helpful tips and tricks about whatever ship it is that you're playing, because he's someone that's played that ship, or he's been playing the game for a long time, so he really knows what's going on. Maybe he'll tell you, hey, destroyer, go stern into the cap. That way, you can throttle up and get out of there, a little bit faster than if you were bow in. Because once you bow in, you're dedicated to the cap, and you got to turn your ship around, show the enemy team your broadside. Whereas if you go stern in, you can just slap W a couple of times and get the hell out of there. So he's a helpful, nice guy in chat. Just trying to help you out. He's not being rude about the advice. He's a decent human being. He's definitely someone you do want on your team for sure. That way, your team is hopefully doing a little bit better. You do have to have someone who's also receptive to that type of advice. This is something that I really like to see in chat. When you got players helping other players out, and especially in my younger years in the game, I got a ton of advice from advice guys that was very good and made me a better player. So, don't always ignore what people are saying in chat. Yeah, if it's someone like the Armchair Admiral that just, is insulting everybody because they're not doing what they're saying to do, yeah, but there are people out there that are genuinely trying to help. So to all you advice guys out there, carry on. You're doing the Lord's work. And I hope you do get some positive karma points for what you're doing. The game is really complicated. It is really deceptively simple looking, but it's really complicated once you pull back the curtain and look at all the inner workings of the game. I've been playing this game for 8 years, and every now and then there's still new stuff that I learn about a ship or a certain parameter of a shell or whatever. So, having these advice guys out there that have this experience and knowledge, sharing it with everybody, definitely someone that you very much want to see show up on your team. That brings us on down to our number 1 slot, which is someone that unfortunately I promise you with 125% certainty you will run across this player, and they are among the worst type of players in the game, and that is the stat shamer. Now, we've talked about like stat jockeys and stuff here on the channel beforehand, but the stat shamer is perhaps the lowest of the low of the stat jockeys. Now, stat jockeys are people that care about their stats. That's all they care about, even though, like with today's teams, it's like, can one man really make that much of a difference in a match with how fast some of these teams get rolled over? But the stat jockey, he just cares about his stats. He wants that shiny purple number next to his name and World of Warships stats, that Unicum number. He wants that high damage, average damage, and that high kill count and stuff. That's one thing. The stat shamer, they are the guys that've got like matchmaking monitor pulled up or potato alert or one of those mods that shows you everybody on your team stats. And what they'll do is, if you make a mistake, or even if before you make a mistake, there's plenty of instances where before you even have a chance to make a mistake, these guys are already on you like, oh, you've got a 47, 45, 42% win rate in that ship. You should just stop playing. What are you doing playing that ship? You're a terrible player. And they just call your stats out in chat because I guess they have nothing better to do than sit there and talk down to you about your stats. which is a terrible way to, play a team game. It's like, buddy, we're on the same team here, right? Like, we are both trying to win this match, so you sitting here harassing me in the first, like, 2 minutes of the game before I've even had a chance to, like, prove myself, you don't know what happened in the... And this is the thing, too, most players, unless it's a ship they like a whole lot, there's a very good chance you probably only have a few dozen battles in, like, a ship, right, in a lot of cases, especially if it's a ship that you're new to, and these guys just start tearing into you regardless, right? It's like, you don't know what happened in those games. I mean, again, look at high-tier games right now, Tier 8 Plus, where most of the player base plays. It's not exactly an overly balanced time, shall we say, with matchmaking. So it's like, you don't know what happened in those games, give the poor guy a chance to, show what he has to offer before you start berating him, at least. But yeah, they won't even wait till you goof up or whatever to start berating you about your stats and whatever. And of course, if you do make a mistake, you're some terrible player with this stat and this PR and all that jazz, so forth and so on. And there's a difference between having those mods and just, being aware of, like, okay, so this guy's not that great, this guy's not that great, so I'm going to have to, really, go here, help him out, and try to keep him alive. There's a difference between, using those stats to make those decisions and just using them to just tear into some poor dude in the game because, he's just a casual player, he's not a super unicum like yourself. And truthfully, stats don't really tell all the story behind a player, right? Sure, sometimes you can get a general idea of how good a player is in a ship from their stats, but again, they don't tell the whole story, right? There's so many instances I've come across of players that, like, on paper their stats aren't that good, but you put them like a competitive setting and you put them on a flank with someone that's going to help them make the right decisions, and they're a pretty good player. Same with random battles too. Some may not have the best stats, but if they're on with their buddies or something and they're talking, they're communicating, they can be a pretty good player and pull off some pretty amazing stuff. But I just despise stat shamers so much because not only do, of course, they just berate poor random people in sometimes not only in their team chat but in all chat, but they just have this holier than thou attitude, which I just hate. I despise that so much. People with that type of attitude. And yeah, it's the funny pixel boat game guy. We're all here to have fun. Again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with looking at stats, again, like I said, to where you maybe, need to help your team out a little bit more, or maybe you need to, see what that guy's doing. If he's doing something wrong, maybe give him some advice in chat. There's nothing wrong with it in that aspect, but again, these guys take it way too far and way too seriously, and just make, the fun pixel boat game just, unfun, miserable time for everyone involved. So guys, those are the top 5 players you'll run across in World of Warships. Let me know what you guys think about this list in the comments down below. What other players would you add to this list, or what other player types have you noticed in the game? Share that with us down below. Hope you guys enjoy. Have a wonderful Monday, wonderful rest of your week. I hope to catch you guys in the next one.